The entire history of the British monarchy, the blade fell. A king knelt in the cold January air. Snow brushed the black cloth covering his hair. The crowd stood frozen, afraid to breathe. Then, one sharp sound. Wood. Steel. Silence. For the first and only time in history, the people of England executed their own king. In that single moment, something unthinkable happened. The crown was no longer sacred. The monarchy was no longer untouchable. Blood stained the symbol that was supposed to last forever. And for a heartbeat in history, the British monarchy almost ended. But this is not the beginning. Because the real mystery is not how a king died. It is how the crown survived. Long before palaces, before thrones, before royal bloodlines, Britain was a land of fear. Dense forests swallowed villages. Wolves hunted at night. Small kingdoms clashed over rivers, hills, and food. There was no England. No unity. No single ruler. There was only power. And power belonged to whoever could take it. Kings were not born secure. They earned their place through violence. Weak rulers vanished. Merciful rulers died early. In this world, a crown was not gold. It was survival. In the 9th century, England stood on the brink of collapse. Viking ships tore across the coastline, burning villages and slaughtering entire communities. Kingdoms fell one by one. Survival seemed impossible. Then came Alfred. Alfred the Great did not begin as a conqueror. He lost battles. He fled into hiding. He watched his land burn. But Alfred did something no king before him had done. He learned. He studied his enemies. He reorganized his armies. He built fortified towns. He created laws to protect ordinary people. And slowly, something new emerged. A king was no longer just a warrior who ruled by fear. A king became a shield, a protector, a symbol of unity in a broken land. But even Alfred could not secure the future. His vision reshaped kingship, yet the crown itself remained fragile. Because no matter how noble the idea, power still invited blood. After Alfred, England descended into darkness again. Generations of rulers rose and fell in rapid succession. Kings were poisoned at feasts. Brothers murdered brothers in their sleep. Sons turned on fathers before the bodies were cold. The throne became a prize soaked in blood. Each new king ruled knowing that loyalty was temporary and betrayal inevitable. The crown did not rest easily on any head. And as England fractured and reformed again and again, one truth became clear. The monarchy was never stable. It survived not because it was safe, but because no alternative lasted long enough to replace it. In 1066, the sea carried a new threat. William of Normandy crossed the Channel with an army hardened by war. His claim to the English throne was written in ambition and enforced with steel. At Hastings, the sky darkened with arrows. Cavalry thundered across the field. Shields shattered. Blood soaked the earth. King Harold fell. William claimed the crown. England transformed overnight. Stone castles rose like monsters across the land. French replaced English in the halls of power. Land was seized and redistributed. Authority became centralized and merciless. The Norman kings ruled through fear, law, and force. But even this new system could not escape fate. Because power built on conquest invites rebellion. One night in 1120, laughter filled the deck of a ship leaving France. The white ship carried England's future, the king's only legitimate son. Drunken sailors ignored warnings. The ship struck rock. Panic erupted. Screams filled the darkness. The ship sank. No heir survived. With one disaster, the future vanished beneath the waves. England descended into chaos. Civil war tore the land apart for years. Villages burned. Nobles betrayed one another. All because of one ship. One moment. The monarchy learned again what it refused to accept. Everything could be lost instantly. As centuries passed, kings grew distant. They claimed divine authority. Their word was law. To oppose them was treason and sin. King John pushed this belief too far. He lost wars. He raised taxes relentlessly. He ruled through cruelty and fear. The barons rebelled. In 1215, they forced the king to sign a document, the Magna Carta. It was not a revolution, but it was a warning. For the first time, the law stood above the crown. The king was no longer untouchable. A crack appeared, small, fragile, but permanent. England collapsed again into bloodshed. The Wars of the Roses turned noble houses against one another. Red rose against white rose. Families destroyed from within. Henry VII seized the throne and promised peace. And for a moment, he delivered it. But his son, Henry VIII, ruled through terror. Henry VIII wanted certainty. He wanted a son. What he created was fear. He shattered the church, married 6 times, executed queens, destroyed enemies without mercy. The crown became absolute. If a queen was not safe, no one was. Yet even Henry could not escape fate. His heirs failed. The Tudor line weakened. Power slipped again through royal fingers. Elizabeth ruled alone. No husband, no children. She balanced fear and brilliance with care. England flourished. The empire expanded. Culture bloomed. But when Elizabeth died, the Tudor bloodline ended. Once again, the crown hovered over emptiness. The Stuarts and Civil War. The Stuarts believed in divine rule. Charles I believed it absolutely. He ruled without parliament. He silenced critics. He raised taxes alone. England exploded. Civil war followed. And the king lost. The king without a crown, regicide, captured, tried, condemned. On January 30th, 1649, Charles I died beneath an axe. The monarchy ended. Or so it seemed. The crown that refused to die. The republic failed. The crown returned. But it returned wounded. From that moment on, the monarchy survived on illusion, on ceremony, on belief. And belief is fragile. One love affair, one scandal, one secret, and the crown can fall again. Because somewhere, locked away in silence, lies a truth written in blood. Waiting. The locked room was silent. Too silent. No footsteps echoed near it. No guard spoke of it. No official records described it. No letters named it. And yet, deep inside the palace, everyone knew it existed. Silence is never empty. It is filled with things that must not be spoken. Whispers moved through corridors faster than truth. Staff avoided certain hallways. Archivists skipped missing pages without explanation. And those who asked questions learned quickly to stop. Something had gone wrong. Something so dangerous that the monarchy chose erasure over confession. Because the crown had learned its most important rule: what cannot be seen cannot be destroyed. When the monarchy returned in 1660, it returned wounded. Charles II stepped onto the throne knowing exactly what had happened to his father. He had seen the scaffold. He had heard the silence after the blade fell. He understood something no king before him truly had. The people could turn. So Charles ruled with laughter instead of fear. He filled the court with music, women, wine, and spectacle. England had suffered war, famine, and execution. The nation wanted relief. Joy became a weapon. But behind the smiles, the monarchy changed forever. Power was now shared. Parliament mattered. Money came with conditions. Authority was no longer absolute. The monarchy had become a symbol. And symbols are fragile. From that moment on, weakness was the greatest enemy. Not rebellion. Not war. Visibility. Centuries later, the crown faced a new danger. Not violence. Not revolution. But madness. George III ruled during one of the most dangerous periods in British history. Across the ocean, the American colonies broke away. An empire fractured. Pride collapsed. At the same time, the king himself began to disappear. He spoke endlessly. He screamed through the night. He talked to trees as if they answered him. He forgot where he was. He forgot who he was. Doctors restrained him. The palace sealed doors. And the truth vanished. Because a mad king was more dangerous than a dead one. If the people knew their ruler was broken, belief would shatter. So the monarchy lied. They smiled for portraits. They staged appearances. They waited for clarity that never truly came. The crown survived again. Not by honesty, but by silence. By the time Victoria took the throne in 1837, the monarchy was deeply unpopular. Previous kings were indulgent, embarrassing, and distant. The crown felt outdated. Many believed it would slowly fade into irrelevance. Victoria did the opposite. She rebuilt it. Young, quiet, and disciplined, she transformed the monarchy into a moral symbol. Duty replaced indulgence. Stability replaced chaos. With Prince Albert beside her, the royal family became an image of order, family, and restraint. And the empire exploded outward. Red spread across the world map. Britain ruled lands it had never seen. Wealth flowed inward. But empire always has a shadow. Behind the curtains were wars, famine, exploitation, and death. The crown benefited. And when Albert died suddenly, Victoria collapsed. She vanished from public life for decades. Once again, the monarchy trembled. Once again, it survived, because time erased outrage, and silence endured. The 20th century arrived like an enemy the monarchy did not understand. Cameras, newspapers, radio, questions. Secrets could no longer hide behind palace walls. Every mistake could be seen, every weakness amplified. The crown had survived by controlling what people knew. Now control was slipping, and the first true fracture came in 1936. Edward VIII was king, but he did not want the crown. He wanted love. Wallace Simpson was unacceptable to the monarchy. Divorced, American, independent, dangerous. The government warned him. The church opposed him. The palace begged him. Edward chose her anyway. He signed the papers. He abdicated. For the first time in history, the monarchy was not overthrown. It was abandoned. That terrified everyone. Because if a king could simply walk away, then the crown was no longer destiny. It was a choice. Then came the King George VI. George VI never wanted the throne. He feared public speaking. His voice betrayed him. Every speech felt like battle. And yet, history offered no mercy. As Europe descended into darkness, Nazi banners rose. War approached. The monarchy faced another defining moment. Flee or stay. George VI stayed. When bombs fell on London, the royal family did not escape. They walked through ruins. They spoke to the wounded. They stood where others stood. And for the first time in generations, the monarchy felt human. Belief returned, not through power, but through shared suffering. Then came Elizabeth II, and the performance of power. Elizabeth never expected the crown so soon. But in 1952, it found her. The empire was collapsing. Nations demanded freedom. The old world was ending. Elizabeth understood something critical. The monarchy could no longer rule. It had to perform. She became calm, reserved, silent. She revealed nothing. Behind her composure, her family fractured. Her sister struggled. Her children rebelled. But the crown showed no cracks. Image held. For decades. Then came Diana. Young, vulnerable, unprepared. The world fell in love with her instantly. And that was the danger. For the first time, the people loved someone more than the institution. Diana felt pain, isolation, betrayal. And she did something forbidden. She showed it. She spoke. She broke the rules of silence. The monarchy did not know how to stop it. Diana died suddenly, violently, in a Paris tunnel. The world froze. Flowers flooded the streets. Grief turned into fury. Questions filled the air. The palace remained silent. Too silent. Again. And belief began to crack. Because silence now looked like guilt. Years passed. Scandals multiplied. Trust weakened. The internet remembered everything. Then Elizabeth II died. The constant was gone. For 70 years, she had been the crown. Now there was only uncertainty. A new king. An exposed institution. And old secrets rising. Deep within palace walls, records waited. Letters sealed. Rooms locked. Names erased. Historians began reopening files once thought closed forever. And one name appeared again and again. Scratched out. Hidden. Never fully erased. A name tied to a disappearance. A name tied to the locked room. A name that threatened to expose how far the crown once went to protect itself. Because some sacrifices were never meant to be known. And now, the door was opening. The door had not been opened in decades. Dust lay thick across the handle, pressed into the grooves of the metal as if time itself had tried to seal it shut. The lock was old, heavy, untouched by modern hands. When the key finally turned, the sound echoed through the corridor like a warning, sharp, final, irreversible. Inside the room were shelves stacked with boxes, folders bound with fading string, paper yellowed by age and secrecy. And there, again and again, was a name. Crossed out, scratched away, written, then erased. Someone had not wanted this name to survive. But history has a way of remembering what power tries hardest to forget. For centuries, the British monarchy perfected a skill far more important than ruling. Control. Control of stories. Control of records. Control of memory. When kings failed, scribes rewrote the narrative. When queens embarrassed the crown, portraits disappeared. When heirs threatened stability, they were quietly removed from view. This was not cruelty for its own sake. It was survival. Because the monarchy understood something fundamental. The crown is not gold or jewels. It is belief. And belief must be protected, no matter the cost. The erased name did not belong to a servant, nor a court official. It belonged to blood. Royal blood. A cousin close enough to the throne to matter. Close enough to be noticed. Close enough to be feared. Too close. In official records, the person never existed. Birth listings were incomplete. Mentions vanished. Public appearances stopped without explanation. But in private letters, the name lingered like a ghost, appearing briefly, then abruptly silenced. Why erase someone so completely? Because they knew something. And knowledge, inside a monarchy, is the most dangerous inheritance of all. A world where crowns were falling. To understand the threat, the story must return to the early 20th century. Europe was breaking apart. Empires trembled. Kings fled. Queens vanished into exile. In Russia, an entire royal family was executed in abasement. In Germany, the Kaiser ran. In Austria, the throne dissolved into history. The age of crowns was ending. And Britain watched in terror. Inside palace walls, advisors whispered late into the night. If it could happen there, they said, it could happen here. The royal family was large. Too large. Too many cousins. Too many claims. And in moments of doubt, people look for alternatives. The cousin who asked the wrong questions. Among the many branches of royal blood, one cousin stood apart. Intelligent. Charismatic. Quietly admired. This person spoke of reform when others demanded obedience. Of limits when others defended absolutes. Of truth when others preferred ceremony. They did not want to destroy the monarchy. They wanted to change it. And to the crown, change looked exactly like death. Because history had taught the monarchy one brutal lesson. Reform is where belief begins to fracture. Distance was the first weapon. At first, the palace chose subtlety. The cousin was sent away, given distant duties, assigned roles far from London and farther from attention. Silence replaced presence. But silence failed. Letters continued. Ideas spread. Meetings happened quietly. People listened. And listening was enough. Because the monarchy did not act when something was broken. It acted when something became risky. Then came the announcement. The cousin was unwell. The language was gentle, vague, carefully chosen. Delicate health, needing rest, private recovery. No scandal, no questions. Then the name stopped appearing altogether. No funeral, no memorial, no explanation, just absence. And the public moved on. Because history moves quickly when guided. What really happened? Behind palace walls, the truth was far darker. Doctors were summoned. Not ordinary physicians. Specialists. Men who asked no questions and wrote no unnecessary notes. The cousin was placed somewhere quiet. Isolated. Controlled. Hidden from public sight. Years passed. The world forgot. But the crown did not. Because the crown never forgets its threats. Then came the Second World War. Britain stood alone. Bombs fell nightly. Cities burned. The monarchy became a symbol of resistance. But symbols are fragile. Not all royal blood believed the same things. Some admired the enemy. Some sympathized. Some wrote letters that should never have existed. And within intelligence reports, the erased name appeared again. In margins. In intercepted correspondence. Marked as sensitive. The danger was no longer abstract. If the public learned that royal blood questioned Britain's cause, belief would collapse. So the files were sealed. Locked. Buried. After the war, the monarchy rebuilt itself carefully. Duty. Service. Silence. Elizabeth II became the face of stability. Calm. Controlled. Unchanging. And for decades, it worked. Until historians noticed something wrong. A gap where a person should exist. Photographs cropped too tightly. Letters ending mid-sentence. An absence too deliberate to be accidental. The erased name returned, not in headlines, but in questions. The breakthrough came quietly. A forgotten archive. An unmarked box. Inside were medical records. Dates. Locations. And a signature unmistakably royal. The cousin had not died. They had lived. Hidden. For years. Cut off from the world. Because allowing them to speak was more dangerous than allowing them to exist. This was not murder. It was erasure. And erasure lasts longer. The letter and the truth, one final document emerged. A letter. Smuggled out long ago. Written not to a king or queen, but to the future. I am not mad. I am not dangerous. I know why I am here. They are afraid of what I know. No signature. Only a date. And a place. The building still stands today. Unmarked. Silent. Its walls holding answers that could destroy an institution. Because proof changes everything. Not scandal. Not rumor. Proof. And if the world learns who was erased, it will ask the next question. Who else vanished? And somewhere inside the palace, someone already knows. Because the final secret of the British monarchy has not yet been revealed, and the crown has never been more afraid of the truth. The truth did not arrive like a bomb. It did not shatter walls or ignite crowds. It leaked, slowly, quietly, like water finding its way through stone that had been solid for centuries. There was no royal address, no moment of confession broadcast across the world, no dramatic announcement from palace gates, only confirmation, cold, precise, unemotional, dates aligned, signatures matched, locations overlapped. The erased royal cousin had existed, had been hidden, had been silenced. And with that realization, something far more dangerous emerged. Not outrage, understanding. What the cousin knew was never about jewels or thrones. It was about systems, the machinery beneath the spectacle. How decisions were made when no one was watching. How reputations were protected. How belief was managed. This was not about ceremony. It was about preservation. The monarchy had always been less a family than an institution. And institutions do not act with emotion. They act with calculation. And for the first time, the public could see the calculations clearly. One question refused to fade. If the monarchy could erase one of its own, what else had it buried? Historians went deeper. They did not find secret prisons or mass conspiracies. They found patterns, quiet ones, choices made in private rooms, decisions postponed until memories faded, truths softened, reshaped, or delayed just long enough to survive. It was not evil. It was control. And control had always been the monarchy's most reliable weapon. The response from the palace followed tradition. There was no denial, no confirmation, only distance, only silence. But this silence felt different. Because the world was no longer waiting to be reassured. It was watching to understand. The monarchy was no longer feared. It was examined, studied, measured like an ancient structure whose cracks were finally visible. The modern crown no longer commands armies. It cannot order executions. It does not rule empires. Its authority exists in trust. And trust, once shaken, never fully returns to its original shape. King Charles III inherited more than a throne. He inherited every shadow cast by history. The execution of a king, the exile of heirs, the abdication for love, the silence after tragedy, the cousin who vanished. And unlike many before him, he understood the danger of pretending otherwise. There was no revolution, only adjustments. Archives opened, but not fully. Language softened, but not confessed. Distance shrank, but never disappeared. The royal family became more visible, more human, more fallible. Not perfect, but closer. And for the monarchy, that was survival. Because perfection invites scrutiny. Humanity invites forgiveness. The British monarchy survived invasions. It survived civil war. It survived execution. It survived revolution, empire, and collapse. Not because it was righteous, but because it adapted. It bent when it could have shattered. It retreated when it could no longer advance. And when it could not rule, it learned to remain. The erased cousin was never publicly named. No statue stands in their honor. No grave bears their title. But their existence changed the monarchy forever. Because it proved the crown was not mystical. It was human, capable of fear, capable of cruelty, capable of reflection. And once the illusion of perfection breaks, belief becomes conditional. Today, the crown still rests on a head, not heavy with gold, heavy with memory. Every monarch now rules beside ghosts. The ghost of a beheaded king, the ghost of a vanished cousin, the ghost of a people who once said enough. These ghosts do not weaken the crown. They restrain it. And restraint, more than power, is what keeps it alive. The final lesson of the crown, the monarchy, learned its final lesson long ago. Power does not come from force. It comes from belief. And belief cannot survive fear forever. The crown did not conquer history. It endured it. Scarred, altered, still standing. Not eternal, but alive. And that is why the British monarchy remains. Not because it cannot fall, but because it remembers how close it came. This was the entire history of the British monarchy. In this cinematic historical documentary, Pastmyst reveals the complete, true story of the British monarchy, from its brutal beginnings to its darkest secrets, hidden disappearances, and moments when the crown nearly collapsed. This film takes you inside real historical events that shaped royal power. The violent origins of kingship in early Britain, the Norman Conquest, and the birth of royal control. The Magna Carta and the first limits placed on kings. The execution of King Charles I, the only British king ever killed by his own people. The fall and return of the monarchy. Royal scandals, abdications, and hidden crises. How silence, secrecy, and erased names protected the crown. Why belief, not force, kept the monarchy alive. Using documented history, archival research, and cinematic storytelling, this documentary explores how the British monarchy survived war, rebellion, empire, and exposure, often by hiding uncomfortable truths. There are no myths here, no legends, only real history, real power, and real consequences. If you are fascinated by royal history, historical mysteries, lost truths, and hidden archives, the rise and survival of empires, documentary storytelling with depth and emotion, subscribe to Pastmyst channel to enjoy more historical history.